Ever wonder what it's like to have $1 trillion? The Saudi royal family does, with a jaw-dropping net worth of $1.4 trillion. That's more than the GDP of most countries. From humble beginnings in the harsh Arabian desert to ruling over vast oil fields, the Al Saud family's rise to power is a real-life rags to riches story. But how did they build this insane fortune? And what do they do with all that cash? Picture this, a vast empty desert stretching as far as the eye can see. Scorching heat, endless sand dunes, and not much else. That's where the Al Saud story kicks off. Back in the early 1900s, these guys were just another desert tribe trying to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But they had big dreams, you know? They wanted to unite the entire Arabian Peninsula under their rule. Enter Abdulaziz ibn Saud, the man who'd change everything. This dude was tough as nails and smart as a whip. He started leading raids to reclaim territory his family had lost. And let me tell you, it wasn't a walk in the park. We're talking brutal desert warfare with camels instead of tanks and swords alongside rifles. But Abdulaziz had another trick up his sleeve: marriage alliances. Yeah, you heard that right. This guy married into pretty much every powerful tribe he could find. Smart move, because now he had allies all over the place. It's like he was playing a real-life game of chess, but with people instead of pieces. All this wheeling and dealing paid off big time. In 1932, after years of fighting and negotiating, Abdulaziz finally did it. He established the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, uniting a bunch of different tribes under one flag. But here's the kicker, nobody knew it yet, but this new country was sitting on a gold mine, or should I say an oil mine. Because in 1938, everything changed. They struck oil, and not just a little bit. We're talking massive reserves, some of the biggest in the world. Suddenly, this desert kingdom nobody cared about was the hottest property on the planet. It's like they won the lottery, but instead of a few $1,000,000, they got an endless supply of black gold. So there you have it. The Al Sauds went from being desert nomads to oil barons practically overnight. One minute they're riding camels across the sand, the next they're signing billion-dollar deals with oil companies. Talk about a glow-up, right? But here's the thing. Having all that oil is one thing. Knowing what to do with it? That's a whole other ballgame. The Al Sauds were about to go on a wild ride, and the rest of the world was going to come along for the trip. Because when you're sitting on that much wealth, everybody wants a piece of the action. And the Al Sauds, they were just getting started. The oil boom, dollars flow like water. The Al Sauds weren't just getting started, they were about to become the ultimate high-stakes players in a game they barely understood. In 1938, they struck oil, but nobody could have predicted how this black gold would transform their lives. How do you go from camels to Cadillacs without losing your mind or your kingdom? Here's the crazy part. Saudi Arabia is sitting on 18% of the world's oil reserves. That's not just a lot, it's an insane amount. Imagine having a gold mine in your backyard, but it's way bigger and pumps out liquid cash 24/7. That's what the Al Sauds were dealing with. But at first they had no clue what to do with all this wealth. It's like winning the lottery, but instead of a few million, you get a country's worth of cash. The Al Sauds were trying to figure out how to run a modern economy when they'd been living in tents not too long ago. Then the 1970s hit and oil prices went through the roof. We're talking skyrocketing to the moon type of prices. And just like that, the Al Sauds went from rich to mega rich overnight. It's like they won the lottery again, but this time the jackpot was in the billions. So what did they do with all that cash? They started buying everything in sight. Palaces that make Buckingham look like a cottage. Private jets that are basically flying hotels. They were spending money faster than their oil wells could pump it out. But here's the thing, when you've got that much money, you've also got a ton of responsibility. And problems. Big ones. The Al Sauds had to figure out how to manage this insane wealth without wrecking their country or losing control. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. There's so much coming at you, you might drown if you're not careful. They had to learn fast how to run a modern economy. We're talking about going from camel trades to international oil markets in the blink of an eye. The Al Sauds had to deal with stuff like inflation, economic diversification, and global politics. It's like being thrown into the deep end of a pool when you've never even seen water before. And get this, all this wealth was changing Saudi society too. People who used to live in mud houses were suddenly driving Mercedes. The country was modernizing at warp speed, and the Al Sauds had to keep up or risk losing it all. But here's where it gets really interesting. All this oil money gave the Al Sauds power beyond their wildest dreams. They weren't just rich. They could influence global markets, sway international politics, and pretty much buy anything they wanted. So how'd they spend all this cash? Well, that's a whole other story. We're talking about purchases that would make even the richest billionaires do a double take. The Al Sauds were about to take luxury to a whole new level, and the world was watching in awe. Palaces fit for 1,000 kings. You might think you know what expensive means, but the Al Sauds are about to redefine that word. Imagine a house so valuable it's worth more than some countries' entire economies. And that's just the beginning of their real estate empire. King Abdullah's palace in Riyadh. It's worth a cool $18 billion. That's not a typo. We're talking about a single building that costs more than most people will see in 100 lifetimes. But here's the kicker. That's just small potatoes for the Al Sauds. They've gone and built an entire city just for royals. It's called King Abdullah Economic City, and it cost a mind-blowing $100 billion. That's right, $100 billion for one city. It's like they looked at regular palaces and thought, nah, too small, let's build our own metropolis. These places ain't your average luxury pads. We're talking gold toilets, private zoos, and gardens that make the Hanging Gardens of Babylon look like a window box. They've got everything money can buy, and probably some things it shouldn't be able to. But here's where it gets really wild. Some of these mega palaces are barely even used. It's like they're building them just because they can. Imagine having a house worth billions and just forgetting about it. That's the level of wealth we're dealing with here. And they're not stopping there. The Al Sauds are now working on a project called NEOM. It's a $500 billion future city that's supposed to have flying taxis, an artificial moon, and robot dinosaurs. Yeah, you heard that right. Robot dinosaurs. It's like they're trying to build their own Jurassic Park, but with more bling. But all this crazy spending ain't without problems. People are starting to ask questions like, is it really okay to spend this much on palaces when there's still poverty in Saudi Arabia? And what about the environment? Building massive cities in the desert ain't exactly eco-friendly. Some folks are also wondering if projects like NEOM are even possible. I mean, artificial moons and robot dinos sound cool, but can they actually pull it off? And what happens to the people already living where they want to build? The Al Sauds are trying to change their image, saying these projects will create jobs and boost the economy, but critics aren't buying it. They say it's just a way for the royals to show off their wealth and power. One thing's for sure, the Al Sauds know how to spend big, but palaces and cities are just the start. Wait till you hear about how they get around. Because when you're this rich, you don't just fly first class. You buy the whole dang plane. Flying high, the royal fleet. You thought first class was luxurious? The Al Sauds took one look at commercial airlines and said, nah, too basic. Imagine a plane where the bathroom is worth more than your house. That's just the start of how these royals fly. When you're as rich as the Saudi royal family, you don't just book a flight, you buy the whole dang airline. These guys have a fleet of private jets that'd make even the biggest celebs jealous. But we ain't talking about your run-of-the-mill Gulfstreams here. Nope, the Al Sauds take luxury to a whole new level. Like stratosphere level. Get this, they've got a Boeing 747 that's decked out in gold. Not gold paint, not gold colored. We're talking actual honest-to-goodness gold. It's like King Midas got his hands on a jumbo jet. This flying palace is worth over $500 million, and that's before they even filled up the gas tank. But that's nothing compared to Prince Al-Walid bin Talal's ride. This dude's got a Boeing 747, 400 with its own throne room. Yeah, you heard that right, a throne room, in a plane. It's like he took a medieval castle, strapped some wings on it and said, let's go for a spin. The plane's so big it can fit 400 people, but the prince stripped it out to make room for all his luxuries. These planes ain't just about getting from A to B, they're like flying hotels. We're talking bedrooms with king-size beds, showers with gold taps, and theaters with screens bigger than your local cinema. Some even have their own prayer rooms, because when you're this high up, you're already halfway to heaven, right? But the craziest part? The total cost of the royal fleet is over $300 million. That's more than some countries spend on their entire air force. And get this, that might be a lowball estimate. Some folks say the real number could be way higher, but the Al Sauds keep that info locked up tighter than Fort Knox. All this luxury in the sky comes with some serious perks. These planes can fly non-stop for 16 hours, crossing oceans and continents without breaking a sweat. They've got technology that'd make NASA jealous and security systems that are probably better than most banks. But here's the kicker. All this flying fancy ain't without its critics. Some people say it's a waste of money when there's still poverty in Saudi Arabia. Others point out how bad all these private flights are for the environment. But when you're this rich, those kind of concerns seem to just fly right over your head. So next time you're stuck in economy class, knees jammed against the seat in front of you, just remember, somewhere out there a Saudi prince is probably lounging on a golden throne 30,000 feet in the air. But planes are kind of boring when you think about it. They're fast, sure, but where's the fun in that? If you really want to see how the Al Sauds roll in style, you got to check out their boats. Because these ain't just yachts, they're floating palaces that'd make Poseidon himself green with envy. Floating palaces, mega yachts of the royals. What kind of boat costs more than most countries' entire naval fleets? The kind owned by Saudi Arabia's royal family. These aren't your average yachts. They're floating fortresses with price tags that'll make your head spin. And wait till you hear about the secret features some of these boats are rumored to have. Let's start with Prince Mohammed bin Salman's yacht, Serene. This thing cost $400 million. That's right, 400 million bucks for a boat. But here's the crazy part. That's not even their biggest or most expensive yacht. The Al Sauds are just getting started. The crown jewel of their fleet is a monster called Azam. This beast is 180 meters long. That's almost 2 football fields end to end. And the price tag? A cool $600 million. You could buy a small country for that kind of cash, but the Al Sauds decided to get a boat instead. But these ain't just big, expensive boats. Nah, these are like floating cities. They've got helipads on the top deck because apparently regular boats are too boring to land on. Some of these yachts have multiple swimming pools, movie theaters, and even their own beaches. Yeah, beaches on a boat. The Al Sauds looked at the ocean and thought, you know what this needs? More sand. And get this, some of these mega yachts supposedly have their own submarines. Because when you're that rich, why settle for just sailing on top of the water? You gotta go under it too. There are even rumors that some of these boats have missile defense systems. You know, just in case some pirates decide to take on the Saudi Royal Navy. The total value of the Al Saud yacht fleet? Over $1 billion. That's more than the GDP of some small nations. And that's just the cost to buy them. The yearly maintenance on these floating palaces is insane. We're talking crews of over 30 people just to keep one of these boats running. But all this luxury comes at a price, and I ain't just talking about money. These mega yachts guzzle fuel like it's going out of style. The environmental impact is huge. It's like they're trying to single-handedly warm the oceans or something. When you compare the Saudi royal yachts to other billionaires' boats, it's not even close. These things are bigger, more expensive, and way more tricked out. It's like the Al Sauds saw what other rich folks were doing and said, hold my non-alcoholic beer. But here's the thing, boats are kind of slow, you know? And when you're a Saudi royal, you can't be wasting time just floating around. So how do they get around when they're on land? Well, buckle up, but not really, because that's a cliche. Because we're about to take a ride through the Al Saud's insane car collection. Trust me, these ain't your granddaddy's Cadillacs. Royal rides, car collections worth kingdoms. Ever seen a car worth more than your entire neighborhood? The Saudi royal family has dozens. Their automotive obsession goes way beyond just collecting fancy rides. It's redefining what's possible in the world of luxury vehicles. And wait till you hear about the diamond-studded surprise they've got parked in their garage. Let's start with Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. This guy doesn't just have a few nice cars. He's got over 300 luxury vehicles. That's not a typo. We're talking about a collection so big it needs its own parking garage the size of a small town. But here's the thing. For the Al Sauds, it ain't about how many cars you've got. It's about how insane each one is. Take their gold-plated Rolls Royces, for example. Yeah, you heard that right. These guys looked at one of the most expensive cars in the world and thought, you know what this needs? More gold. It's like King Midas went on a car-buying spree. But that's just the start of the craziness. One Saudi prince decided buying a Lamborghini wasn't baller enough. So what did he do? He bought 25 identical Lamborghinis. Not for himself, for his friends. Because when you're that rich, you don't just treat yourself. You make sure your whole squad is rolling in style. But the crown jewel of their collection? A Mercedes that's literally covered in diamonds. This thing costs $48 million. That's more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. And they use it to go grocery shopping. Okay, maybe not, but you get the point. It's next-level extravagance. The total value of all these royal rides, over $500 million. That's more than the entire economy of some small countries. And that's probably a low estimate. The Al Sauds are so rich they probably lose supercars in their garages like we lose socks in the laundry. But it ain't just about the price tags. These cars need some serious maintenance. The Al Sauds have got teams of mechanics whose only job is to keep these multi-million-dollar machines running smooth. It's like a luxury car hospital, but the patients are made of gold and diamonds. And don't even get me started on the customization. We're talking about interiors that'd make a 5-star hotel jealous. They've got cars with built-in fridges, massive TV screens, and sound systems that could blow the roof off a concert hall. One car even has a starlight roof, thousands of fiber optic lights to make it look like you're driving under the night sky. But here's the crazy part. Some of these cars barely get driven. They're more like 4-wheeled trophies. The Al Sauds will buy a car just because it's rare or expensive, then let it sit in a climate-controlled garage. It's like having the Mona Lisa and using it as a coaster. All this car craziness just shows how the Al Sauds roll. But if you think their rides are wild, wait till you see where they go shopping. Because when you're this loaded, you don't just hit up the mall, you buy the whole dang store. Shopping sprees fit for royalty. Forget Black Friday deals. When the Al Sauds go shopping, they don't wait for sales. They buy entire fashion collections before they even hit the stores. But that's small change compared to their most insane purchase. The Saudi royals don't just shop, they redefine what it means to splurge. These guys once rented out an entire hotel in the Maldives. Not a room, not a floor, the whole dang hotel, just because they felt like it. That's the kind of thing you do when your wallet's thicker than a phone book. But that's nothing compared to what one princess did. She dropped $20 million in a single shopping trip. That's right, 20 million bucks in one go. Most people don't spend that much in their entire lives, but for this princess, it was just another Tuesday. The Al Sauds don't just buy stuff, they buy exclusivity. They'll snatch up entire collections from top designers before they even hit the stores. It's like they're playing fashion monopoly, but with real money. They're not just setting trends, they're owning them before anyone else gets a chance. Their annual shopping budget? It's in the billions. That's with a B. It's so much cash that it actually impacts the luxury market. When the Al Sauds go shopping, fashion houses sit up and take notice. They're not just customers, they're practically business partners at this point. All this spending has some pretty wild effects. Luxury brands are falling over themselves to cater to the Al Sauds. They're creating special, one-of-a-kind pieces just for the royal family. It's like having the world's most expensive personal shoppers, but instead of finding stuff for you, they're making it from scratch. But it ain't just about clothes and jewelry. The Al Sauds' shopping habits are changing whole economies. Their purchases are pumping millions into luxury markets around the world. It's like they've got their own personal stimulus package, but instead of helping out regular folks, it's all going to high-end stores. All this luxury comes at a price, though. And I ain't just talking about the price tags. The Al Saud's crazy spending is raising eyebrows. People are starting to ask questions, like, is it really okay to spend this much when there's still poverty in Saudi Arabia? And what about the environment? All those private jets flying them to shopping sprees ain't exactly eco-friendly. But here's the thing. The Al Sauds don't seem too bothered by the criticism. They're trying to change their image, sure, but they're not exactly cutting back on the shopping. It's like they're playing a game of luxury chicken, seeing how far they can push it before something gives. So next time you're feeling guilty about splurging on a new pair of shoes, just remember, somewhere out there a Saudi princess is probably buying out an entire store. But all this fancy shopping is just the tip of the iceberg. The Al Saud's wealth goes way deeper than designer clothes and fancy hotels. And that's where things start to get really interesting and controversial. The price of power, controversies and criticisms. You'd think having all that cash would solve every problem, right? Well, for the Al Sauds, it's actually creating a whole new set of headaches. We're talking international drama, angry activists, and a reputation that's got more tarnish than their solid gold toilets. Let's take a peek behind the palace walls and see what's really going down. First up, human rights organizations have been giving the Saudi regime a serious side-eye for years. They're not fans of how the Al Sauds treat people who speak out against them. It's like the royals forgot that freedom of speech is a thing. People are getting locked up just for tweeting the wrong thing. Not cool, but that's just the start. Remember the Jamal Khashoggi incident in 2018? That really put the Al Sauds in the global hot seat. This journalist goes into a Saudi consulate and never comes out. Next thing you know, the whole world's asking questions and they're not buying the answers they're getting. It's like something out of a spy movie, but way more messed up. Then there's the whole wealth inequality thing. The Al Sauds are swimming in cash, but a lot of regular Saudi citizens are struggling to make ends meet. It's like they're living in two different worlds. Some folks are wondering why all that oil money isn't trickling down to everyone else. And speaking of oil, that's another sore spot. Critics say the Al Sauds are using their control over oil prices to mess with the global economy. They can make prices go up or down just by turning a few valves. It's like they've got their hand on the world's thermostat and not everyone's happy about it. The Al Sauds are trying to fix their image, though. They're throwing money at charity projects and talking about modernizing the country. But here's the thing. Can you really buy a good reputation? Some people aren't buying it. They're saying it's all just a big PR stunt. All this controversy is putting the Al Sauds in a tough spot. They've got all the money in the world, but they can't seem to shake off the bad press. It's like they're finding out the hard way that cash can't solve everything. So what's next for this trillion-dollar family? Can they turn things around, or is all that wealth going to end up being more trouble than it's worth? One thing's for sure, the world's watching to see what they'll do next. And with all that money and power on the line, you can bet it's going to be interesting. Philanthropy and Vision 2030, changing perceptions. Remember when Saudi Arabia was all about oil and nothing else? Well, hold on to your hats, because things are changing faster than you can say black gold. The Al Sauds are pouring billions into a makeover that's so big it's got its own name, Vision 2030. But is this just a fancy facelift, or are we looking at a true transformation? Vision 2030 ain't just some small-time plan. It's the Al Saud's big shot at showing the world they're more than just oil barons with deep pockets. They're trying to turn Saudi Arabia into a powerhouse that doesn't need to rely on pumping crude out of the ground. We're talking major investments in tech, entertainment, and get this, renewable energy, in a country built on oil. Sounds crazy, right? But here's the thing, they're not just talking the talk. The Al Sauds are throwing serious cash at this vision. They're building entire cities from scratch, like Neom, a $500 billion future metropolis that's supposed to have everything from flying taxis to an artificial moon. It's like they're trying to build their own version of Dubai, but on steroids. And it ain't just about fancy cities. The Al Sauds are opening up the country to tourists for the first time. Yeah, you heard that right. The same place that used to be tighter than Fort Knox is now rolling out the welcome mat. They're building luxury resorts on the Red Sea and hosting big-time events like Formula One races. It's like they woke up one day and decided to turn the whole country into a giant theme park. Some of the princes are even getting into the charity game. They're pledging billions to causes around the world, trying to show they're not just about buying gold-plated everything. It's like they finally realized that having a good rep might be worth more than another diamond-encrusted supercar. But here's where it gets tricky. A lot of folks are side-eyeing all this change. They're saying it's just a big PR move to distract from other issues like, can you really make up for years of bad press with a few shiny new buildings and some donations? It's like trying to fix a leaky oil tanker with a Band-Aid. And then there's the big question, can they really pull it off? Moving an entire economy away from oil ain't exactly a walk in the park. It's more like trying to turn a supertanker on a dime. The Al Sauds are betting big, but if it doesn't work out, they could be in for a world of hurt. So what's next for this trillion-dollar family? Can they really reinvent themselves and their country? Or is this all just a really expensive game of pretend? One thing's for sure, the world's watching. And with the kind of cash and power the Al Sauds are throwing around, you can bet the next few years are going to be one wild ride. The next generation, future of the Al Saud dynasty. Speaking of wild rides, the Al Sauds are about to face their biggest roller coaster yet. The old guard's stepping down and a new prince is stepping up. But here's the kicker. He's got some ideas that are making waves both inside and outside the palace walls. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS as he's known, is next in line for the throne. This guy's not your typical Saudi royal. He's young, ambitious, and he's got big plans to shake things up. MBS is pushing for reforms that would make his grandpa's head spin. We're talking about letting women drive, opening up movie theaters, and even talking about moderate Islam. It's like he's trying to drag Saudi Arabia into the 21st century overnight. But not everyone's thrilled about these changes. Some of the old-school royals and religious leaders are grumbling. They're worried MBS is moving too fast and throwing out traditions left and right. It's like watching a family feud, but with billions of dollars and the future of a country at stake. MBS has also been cracking down on corruption. He even locked up some of his own cousins in a fancy hotel, accusing them of stealing from the country. But here's the thing. He's also been tough on anyone who speaks out against him. Activists and journalists have been getting into trouble, and that's got human rights groups all riled up. The Al Sauds are trying to future-proof their kingdom by investing in tech and moving away from oil. They're throwing cash at companies like Uber and talking about building smart cities in the desert. It's like they're trying to turn Saudi Arabia into a mix of Silicon Valley and Las Vegas, but with more camels. But the big question is, can they keep their power in a world that's changing faster than a Tesla on ludicrous mode? The Al Sauds have been in charge for almost a century, but now they're facing challenges they've never seen before. Climate change is making oil less popular, and people are demanding more freedoms. The next few years are going to be crucial for the Al Sauds. The choices they make won't just shape Saudi Arabia, they could affect the whole world. We're talking about oil prices, Middle East politics, and even global tech investments. It's like they're playing a real-life game of risk, but with trillions of dollars on the line. So, will the Al Sauds be able to keep their crown, or will all their cash and power slip through their fingers like desert sand? One thing's for sure, the world's watching, and this royal drama is far from over. The hidden world, secrets of the Saudi elite. You've seen their palaces and supercars, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. What if I told you the Al Sauds have a whole secret world that makes their public wealth look like pocket change? Let's dive into the shadows where the real power lies. The Al Sauds ain't just rich, they're paranoid, and with good reason. They've got a secret service that'd make the CIA jealous. These guys are always watching, always listening. They use tech so advanced it's like something out of a sci-fi movie. We're talking facial recognition, surveillance drones, and AI systems that can predict threats before they even happen. But that's just the start. The royals are obsessed with protecting their wealth. They've got underground vaults bigger than most banks, filled with gold, cash, and who knows what else. Some say they've even got their own special currency just in case the global economy tanks. And get this, there are rumors about massive underground bunkers. Not just any bunkers, but luxury ones. We're talking underground cities that can house thousands of people for years. They've got everything from hospitals to movie theaters. It's like they're preparing for the apocalypse, but in style. The Al Sauds don't mess around when it comes to security. They've got escape plans for every scenario you can imagine. Private jets are always fueled up and ready to go. There are secret tunnels leading out of palaces and government buildings. Some say they've even got hidden submarines just in case they need to make a quick getaway by sea. But the craziest part? Body doubles. Yeah, you heard that right. The most important royals supposedly have teams of lookalikes. These guys are trained to act and talk just like the real deal. It's like a real-life version of that movie Dave, but with billions of dollars at stake. The Al Sauds also have their own special passports. These ain't your regular travel documents. They're like golden tickets that let them go anywhere, anytime, no questions asked. Customs lines, security checks, that's for regular folks, not Saudi royalty. Here's the thing though, we may never know the full truth about all this stuff. The Al Sauds are masters at keeping secrets. What we do know is probably just scratching the surface. For every rumor we hear, there are probably 10 more we don't. But one thing's for sure, the Al Saud's power goes way beyond what we see on the surface. Their public wealth is impressive, sure, but it's this hidden world, this shadow empire that really keeps them on top. It's a world of secrets, power, and unimaginable wealth, and it's a world that most of us will never get to see. Beyond money, the cultural impact of royal wealth. But what if I told you the Al Saud's true power isn't just about money or secrets? There's something even bigger at play, something that touches billions of lives every day. We're talking about cultural influence on a global scale, and it's changing the world in ways you might not expect. The Al Sauds ain't just rich, they're tastemakers. Their wealth shapes fashion, art, and architecture around the world. When a Saudi prince buys a painting, art prices skyrocket. When a princess wears a designer outfit, it sells out in minutes. They're not just following trends, they're creating them. But it ain't all glitz and glamour. There's a darker side to this cultural influence. The Al Sauds have built massive mosques and Islamic centers all over the world. We're talking huge structures that cost millions of dollars. On the surface, it looks like they're just being generous. But some folks say there's more to it. Critics argue that the Al Sauds are using these buildings to spread their own version of Islam. It's a strict interpretation that some people ain't too happy about. They're worried it's changing local cultures and traditions. The Al Saud's influence goes way beyond religion, though. Their investments shape global markets and politics. When they buy or sell stocks, whole economies feel it. When they make a political decision, world leaders pay attention. It's like they've got their fingers in every pie and they're not afraid to squeeze. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Al Sauds are trying to change their image. They're investing in entertainment and sports now. They're bringing big concerts and sports events to Saudi Arabia. It's like they're trying to show the world they can be fun too. Some people love what the Al Sauds are doing. They say it's bringing progress and new ideas to conservative societies. Others hate it. They think the Al Sauds are using their money to push their own agenda. But love them or hate them, you can't ignore the Al Sauds. Their influence goes way beyond their bank accounts. They're shaping how people think, dress, and even pray around the world. It's like they're playing a real-life game of cultural chess and they've got billions of pieces to move around. So next time you see a new fashion trend or hear about a big international deal, ask yourself, could the Al Sauds be behind it? Because chances are their influence is at work, even if you can't see it. They might be known for their money, but their real power is in how they're changing the world, one culture at a time. The price tag of a kingdom, tallying the trillions. You think you know rich? The Al Sauds are playing a whole different game. Their wealth isn't just measured in billions, we're talking trillions. And that's where things get really interesting. Let's start with the big number everyone throws around, $1.4 trillion. That's the Al Saud's estimated net worth. It's more money than most countries have in their entire economy. But here's the kicker, that might be lowballing it. Some experts say the Al Sauds could be worth up to $4 trillion. That's not a typo. We're talking about $4,000 billion. It's so much cash, it's hard for our brains to even process it. But why is it so hard to pin down their wealth? Well, the Al Sauds ain't just rich in the normal way. They own entire cities. Not just buildings, not just neighborhoods, whole cities. They've got companies worth billions, and they even own other countries' debts. It's like they're playing Monopoly, but with real countries. And here's another thing that makes it tricky. There are thousands of Al Saud family members. The wealth is spread out among all of them. Some are super rich, others are just regular rich. It's like trying to count grains of sand on a beach, but each grain is worth millions. They've got so much stuff, it's almost impossible to add it all up. They own palaces that are worth more than some countries' entire economies. They've got fleets of private jets that could probably fly everyone in a small city at the same time. And don't even get me started on their yacht collection. It's worth over $1 billion by itself. But it ain't just about physical stuff. The Al Sauds have investments all over the world. They own chunks of big companies you've probably heard of. They've got real estate in pretty much every major city. It's like they've got their fingers in every money pie on the planet. So what's the bottom line? We might never know exactly how much the Al Sauds are worth. It's like trying to count stars in the sky. There's always more than you think. But one thing's for sure. They're in a league of their own when it comes to wealth. The Al Sauds ain't just rich. They're so rich they make other billionaires look like they're shopping at the dollar store. It's a level of wealth that's hard to even imagine. And the craziest part? They're still making more money every single day.